Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Santos on Sports, along with Chris Santos. I am a very grumpy Paul Santos. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But the first thing we'd like to do is thank our sponsors, Scotty's Pub, 202 Pleasant Street, Fall River, Citywide Glass with 3 locations in Dartmouth, Fall River, and Taunton, Lakeville Athletic Club, 325 Bedford Street in Lakeville, where you can play tennis, pickleball, and more, and maybe catch up with Chris Santos down there warming up his game. And attorney John Seed, good friend of ours, 156 8th Street in New Bedford, and you can check out his website at johncseed.com. So, Chris, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, Paul. It's been a busy week. It's been some good weather. At the same time, maybe not as well as you. Once again, I want to congratulate you on your one birthday.
Yes,
so I know you had that last week. And number 2, I hear Paul Santos is going to be a grandfather now. So I want to say congratulations to you on that as well.
That's right. Going to be a vavoo. Can you believe
that?
Imagine that. Can you be like a happening hip vavoo at the same time?
Sure can.
That's what I'm going for.
Awesome. Kids going to love it.
Well, it's a wonderful thing, and we're very, very thankful. So we're looking forward to that. That's going to be at the end of, January of 2023. So that's our first one. So we're very excited, and hopefully everything will go smoothly, and we'll have a baby pretty soon.
Awesome to hear. And as you can see, I'm a little excited, as my hat will tell you that the Orioles have finally, for probably in 10 to 20 years, for all I know, have finally jumped up in front of your Boston Red Sox, which hasn't happened in a long time. So I got to put the hat on just to say, hey, Paul, guess who's head of the Red Sox and who's in last in the American League East? What's going on there, Paul? You got a rant for us?
I'm a little irritated right now. In fact, I'm triple irritated. Okay.
Go ahead, I'm listening.
So starting with the Red Sox, right? You got John Henry, right? This whole thing is John Henry's fault. Walks around with the grainy glasses, and he's got the wife 20 years younger, probably never look at him if he wasn't a billionaire walking around, and what does he do to help this team? Nothing. This team is basically, they're in last place right now, but they're still only 3-4 games out of the wild card, maybe more by now. But the team just needed some help at the beginning of the year. Get a closer, which he can afford. He's got pockets. You want to talk about deep pockets. This guy's a multi-billionaire buying teams. He's all distracted. He doesn't care about the Red Sox anymore. He's got the Pittsburgh Penguins, which I know Chris is a Pittsburgh Penguin guy. And he's got these other teams that he's focusing. He's not focused on the Red Sox anymore. Got a couple of championships. Now he's letting them slide. He won't sign Bogarts, who's been a good soldier over the years, took less money. Devers, he won't sign up. He basically makes a statement that we got to build from the bottom up. And then after that, the team goes down in the tank, which is what he really wanted, so he can start selling. I mean, it's just a terrible thing, and it's all his fault. John Henry, it's all his fault. And before we respond to that, number 2, Jaylen Brown, they put him on the trading block for Kevin Durant. I got one better than that. How about Jason Tatum? How about getting rid of Mr. Zero, who can't come through in the clutch? I want the guy who can come through in the clutch, the guy that comes through in the finals, the guy that comes through in the chipper down. It's Jaylen Brown. It's not Jason Tatum. He's overrated with a capital O. And finally, one last thing, Mac Jones, right? I'm hearing about Mac Jones, and Coach Belichick praises Mac Jones. What a great guy he is, hard work. So out comes the Brady people, right? They're not happy. He's got 7 Super Bowls, still not happy. They come out and say, well, how come you never said that about Brady? Oh, you never said that about Brady. But he never said that about Brady. He said time and time again that Brady was there's no quarterback that I'd rather have in the clutch than Tom Brady. How many times do they want him to say it? You know what I mean? And by the way, Tom Brady's a great quarterback and all that, but, greatest of all time. I hate to bring that up again, but you know what? It's a lot easier to be the greatest of all time when you've played with all-stars your whole career. You know what I mean? And in the years that he didn't play with all-stars, he was one and done against Tennessee. So you got to be surrounded by talent to win, okay? So there's 3 things that irritated me going into the show. 1, 2, and 3. Of course, you wearing that hat didn't get us off to a good start. So there you go. I feel better now already.
Paul, did you have a tough day at work today at the attorney and over in court? And I can see some frustration coming out, and I see you taking it out on your New England teams. But let's start with the first one, Paul. And last week, we came out and we asked, are you buyers or are you sellers? And we talked about what was coming up. And we said it was a 4-game series with Toronto, which they got completely destroyed. And then they came with Franconia and Cleveland, and the Guardians took it to them just as much. So right now, from last week to this week, this is a team in disarray. And there's no doubt about it. You can go from Henry to Bloom to Cora. You can go all three of them. Right now, it is not good for the Boston Red Sox. And another one last night when, you had Schreiber in there and then you got Houck in there and the guy hits obviously the home run. So a lot going on for these Red Sox. And what's taking so long, maybe, I guess to say, to make some moves, because you can see the writing on the wall. This team is not advancing forward. This team is dropping backwards, and they are now last in the American League East, and they need help, and they need help quickly, and I don't know what they're going to do. Obviously, we've heard J.D. Martinez is now named, pop right up. First guy they talked about, maybe that's a seller right there to get him going. Bogarts' name has come up as well, maybe the second one, to see, what they can get out of him. And then you talked about, are we signing anybody? How are we keeping people happy? And let's not forget, of course, this bullpen that has been really shell-shocked from the beginning till now, and they need a lot of help in there too. So a lot is going on in Boston. And as I say that, you saw Paul put up our number at 774-762-6234. So let us know what you think. But from last week to this week, Paul, it has been a tough week for the Boston Red Sox.
So I say to the people that are watching, that are looking at that phone number right there, the 774-762-6234, are you going to let Chris Santos sit there with that Orioles hat on and just like rub it in our face like that? Are you just going to sit there and take it? That's what I want to know. So call up and let us know. But I got to tell you, John Henry, right, multi-billionaire, whatever his problem is, I don't know why he just didn't make the Red Sox a little bit better, because, you're looking at them, and again, they're only a few games out of the wild card, but they're sinking fast, right? Mm-hmm. Their record against the American League East is terrible. But how many players are they away from being a competitive team? Not many. First baseman that could play. I mean, they didn't re-sign Schwarber. Like you said, they don't even have a closer. What is that? Closer by committee? I mean, what do you mean closer by committee? That never works, closer by committee. So what are you doing there? It really is John Henry. I don't know why he just basically sold out this year for some other year. I mean, if you have a chance to win this year, win this year. I mean, you're the Boston Red Sox. You're not like some small market team,
Well, you would think the core of Story, Bogarts, Devers, Vasquez, and even Verdugo, sit back and solidify what you want there. And then you can get some pieces, as you said, first base, Duran, Ruff Schneider, they've been trying some pieces of the puzzle out there. Can they get an outfielder? Obviously, your starters, Eovaldi, was banged up. Sale, going to be out for a while. Pavetta, doing what he does. But even the other ones that have come in and attempted to try and help this club have not done the job. Never mind if they get in trouble, what has helped out. And then you talked about committee. It was supposed to be the Tanner Houck show, to be the guy, I think, to be their normal closer. Well, that didn't happen last night, that's for sure. So a lot going on. And, yeah, they're waiting. And how about the Yankees? You sit back and say, hey, here's a team in first place, up by that much, looking for playoffs. They go out and, I guess, get Benintendi from the Royals to kind of solidify another outfield position for them. Maybe they're not happy with something out there, but they didn't wait. They went out and got an all-star player and someone who can really bat for average, get the big hit when he wants the big hit as well. And he's got some pop on his bat too. So they went out and did something about it. But right now, they're just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. You can't wait too much longer, because the 4-game or 5-game behind the wild card can only decrease if they continue the way they are.
How about Benintendi? Maybe if you can just learn to pull the ball a little bit more, that short right field porch, oh boy. Can you see them playing him in a playoff or a wild card game, and Benintendi just pops one down the right field line there? Oh, God, that would be so annoying. That would be even worse than the Orioles if it's the New York Yankees. Okay, let's go to the phones. Ryan is in Mattapoisett.
Hey.
You're on Santos on Sports.
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Going good. How are you?
Listen. Chris, I'm completely fine with you repping your team today. The Red Sox deserve every freaking second of it, because it has been an absolute train wreck. This is a team that has a $240 million payroll. There is no excuse for them to be absolutely dead last. And these past few series, it's been complete evidence of it. How many errors did Franchi Cordero have last night? It's what I've been saying this entire time. First base, first base, first base. Franchi Cordero and Bobby Dahlbeck, it's just not going to work. Forget the bullpen. I feel like just for the past couple of years, the thing that's killed the Red Sox the most was the lack of a true at least defensive first baseman. And to be honest, I'm not confident that they're going to go out and get a guy like Josh Bell, because it seems like Chaim Bloom is just dead set on Cordero and Bobby Dahlbeck, or maybe bringing up Tristan Casas. Maybe that's our saving grace. I don't know.
What do you think?
I was sat here last week, and you came on, and that situation being that close in the wild card, but what a tough week it has been. And I'm trying to still figure out when, you want to make moves, and you have the toughest division in baseball with teams like Toronto sitting right there. Obviously, what the Yankees have done. Even the Orioles have stepped up their game, and we know what Tampa can do even without Juan DeFranco. It's quite impressive how great the American League East is right now. But if you have any chance to make any kind of moves, it's to how can we get better to beat just those teams? Forget about the Central and forget about the West. You can handle those teams. It's how do you beat the East and not be in last place, and they haven't done anything. And when you got swept by Toronto, I scratched my head and said, oh boy, this is not good right now for the Boston Red Sox. And that's when we last talked last week. So it was a very, very difficult 4-game series against Toronto and got beat very bad.
Absolutely ridiculous. And I said it last week after 28-5 that final score was, 28 whatever it was. Sox should be disbanded and wiped from the history books after that performance. It was just so bad. It was so bad, and it's looking even worse. We were 4-0 against the Guardians going into this series, and now it's looking like we might get swept. Or did we? I can't remember if we took one of the games, but it's probably going to lose the series at this point.
Yeah, it's really ugly. And again, getting back to John Henry, I don't know what the problem is. You said first base. Think how many games we've lost because of first base. Not only because, they're batting 200 or whatever they're batting, although Dahlbeck had a couple home runs in the last couple of weeks, but so what, we're talking about somebody that's on the Mendoza line, and Franchi Cordero, making all kind of errors and everything. They've lost many games offensively and defensively at first base. So how much money is it really costing Mr. Billionaire walking around there, put your hand in your pocket and pay a first baseman before we even get the shortstop and third base? Talking about this year, I don't understand, Chris, why he doesn't pay at least a first baseman, maybe get a closer. Not going to break the bank. And the Red Sox would probably be right up there, maybe in the first or second wild card, just doing those couple of things. I think they really didn't need a lot to be in this race. What do you think?
Yeah, and as Ryan said, why not make some other kind of move too? If Cordero and Dahlbeck are not the situation, then attempt to bring up a farmhand. Maybe that will help. Try anything if those two are not getting the job done. And if you don't do it by trade, and Bloom's supposed to be this great farm guy that he loves, and he did it when he was with Tampa, okay, well then let's make the next move and bring somebody up. Or are you just going to keep watching this debacle and you keep falling down in the standings? That's the part that I don't understand. It's happening right in front of you, and you're doing nothing about it. What do you think, Ryan?
I completely agree. And going back to what Paul was saying about John Henry, I'll tell you what's wrong. He's too worried about what's going on in Liverpool and the Pittsburgh Penguins and all these other things going on. It just looks like he doesn't give a damn about the Red Sox anymore.
Well, I got a couple of comments here from Leo Montero. The first thing he was asking is, should the Red Sox be buyers or sellers as you get closer and closer? And as it gets closer, it's almost like your opinion can change just in the next few days. So we got that. And then he asked this question. This is great. Have we found the only Orioles fan in the state of Massachusetts? There aren't many of them.
Hey, listen, I can name a couple, and I know one of our sponsors, his father is a huge Oriole fan. So John Seed Sr., I know he's an Orioles fan. So
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. So that's nice to see. We've talked about that many a time. So there might be a couple here and there, but I agree. Not too many. So, hey,
Hey,
I
John,
got to take it while I can. And I just jumped ahead of them. So I'm a little excited. They got a lot of young kids in that organization right now. And we had a great draft. So hopefully a lot of those kids can come up and maybe in the next few years, the Orioles can turn things around and hopefully get up even ahead in the East.
well, so now we found at least two Orioles fans, Chris Santos and John Seed Sr. But, John
Yes.
Seed Sr., he goes back to Brooks Robinson, right? So at least he has an excuse, you know what I mean?
Well, hey, I was with Jim Palmer and,
Okay, that's all
a
right.
few more of those guys with Al Bumbry and Scotty McGregor and the Martinez brothers and all the guys that I had. So Eddie Drinking B. Murray. So there's another one right there. So it was a good time for me then, and it's been a long time ever since. And you can look right over my shoulder on this side over here, and you can look at that banner right there. Yeah, I know. It says 1983. Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah, Cal Ripken era.
Yes.
And I think Leo Montero also says that he thinks the Guardians are actually better than the Red Sox and they're healthier right now. So yeah, I see Terry Francona out there coming out of the dugout, and boy, it gives me those feelings of 2004 watching him come out of the dugout. Still a great manager.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, Terry does a good job, and they talked about it. I believe in the last game, and they signaled him out, and they really talked about what Franconia did not only for the Boston organization, but what he's done since, even being with Cleveland, and how he's led that team in the Central, and got them where they are right now. So yeah, he's a good coach, no doubt about it.
All right, so Ryan, I have a question. What are we going to do? What are we going to do as we get closer to the trade deadline? I mean, should we sell? Should we buy? I mean, I don't know if they can really get back into this race, even if they load up at the trade deadline. I don't know. It just feels like almost like a hopeless cause now. And it's all started because they didn't do something earlier in the season. But now we have to deal with now. We can't deal with last month or last week or whatever. What do you think they should do as this date gets closer and closer?
I think they should try to salvage something. Again, at this point, just get another first baseman.
First base.
First base. What do I keep saying? I'm just going to keep hammering that home. But to be honest, it might just be time, and I think the organization is trending towards this too. It might just be time to blow the whole thing up, despite the fact that we were this close to not winning the World Series, going to the World Series last year, and it's just completely spiraled. It's completely spiraled the other way. It seems like more and more like you're not going to have Bogarts back. Who knows what the hell's going to happen with Rafi Devers? It might just be time to dismantle the whole thing and just go the whole Bloom way. Not that I like that in any way, shape, or form, but that just feels like the direction is going. So we'll just get it the hell over with.
I don't know, Chris. I think that's a little drastic, blowing the whole thing up.
I do too. I still like core players, and then you get role players around them. And I still think the Red Sox have that. They just have to find a way to obviously create the contracts that fit and sit back and say, hey, we got to get these guys on board, and then find players around them to keep it going. And I gave you the core players who I think they should keep out there, and then find what they can around it. But it also goes to show how important a pitching staff really is on a ball club, because you can have great players, and Ryan has said it as well with Bogarts, Devers, and some of the guys that can really bat. But when you don't got pitching, you can't really outscore teams all the time, especially not in American League East. So you have to find a way to really kind of figure out, how can I do these starters? And going into the season, I did not like the 5 that they had on paper starting the season, and then even the bullpen to go with it. So I thought it was all about the pitching staff, personally, for me. And that being said, it's now even gone into the hitting part, and let's not forget what they've done defensively, which has been very, very poor. So a lot going on for the Red Sox.
But Ryan is right. You look at last year, they got into that wild card. They had that great game against New York. They got on a roll. They got hot at the right time, even around now when things were going too good. They kind of got on a roll. The talent came together. The coach, I still think, is an excellent manager, Alex Cora, got into the playoffs and got within a few games. I mean, Houston was better. I went to one of the games, and they played Sweet Caroline while the Red Sox were getting blown out after I spent all that money on those box seats. I went to the wrong game. The one they came and won in the end, I wasn't at that one. I was the one they got hammered. But anyway, Houston was better. But still, to be that close to the World Series, and I think, Ryan, you're right, that to be that close to the World Series and the next year, you don't make the team any better. I mean, what were they thinking in the front office?
I don't know. I really don't know. It's just like maybe it was a case of like, oh, we got this close. We're good with what we got. We don't need to make any like big time splashes other than maybe grab a Trevor Story or I don't know. Let's just completely not address a clear position of need, especially with Kyle Schwarber heading out the door. And he was no defensive mastermind at first base, but at least the man can actually hit. With these two first basemen we got absolutely nothing.
Yeah, the first base, I mean, it is just awful. I look at all the errors, and not just first base, but some of the defense. Oh my God, Chris was talking about the pitching. The defense, I thought I was watching like a bad little league team or something. I'm looking at the play, balls dropping in. How about that one with they lost the ball in the sun in center field, and Duran, he didn't even turn around and go for the ball. Now he's looking at the other guy saying, well, he was going to get there first, but what a bad optic. It was just have him turn around like, oh, well, it goes in inside the park, home run. What are we really going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? His ass should have been on the bench, Chris, in the next game.
And I think the Red Sox, Ryan, stuck with their farm hands instead and sat back on their laurels and said, well, we have a great farm system. We're going to let these guys be the one that puts us over the top. And it hasn't worked out. And whether it's Pawtucket or Trenton or well, not Pawtucket anymore, Worcester, but wherever they're coming from in that farm system, I think they've gone that route instead of, throwing it out, except for Story, and throwing it out and saying, okay, what are we going to do? So I think they've gone in that direction, and they wanted to see what would happen. Now, Hernandez has been out, obviously, too, when they got him from last year. But, I'm not going to say that that's a huge piece, but I think they decided to try to stay with that and say, let our organization do the job instead of going out and spending the big bucks. And it hasn't worked out.
Not at all. And the fact that Jaron Duran didn't get sent back down to the minors after letting up that in the park grand slam is freaking mind boggling to me. I got a buddy of mine who's a Yankees fan who said it perfectly. He plays defense like he's a chicken with his head cut off. That's literally been the case here, and which sucks because he looked good when he first came in to replace Kike Hernandez. He was hitting well. He was showing off his wheels, but that just I don't know what the hell happened, but things just went completely down south, and it's just been representative of what the Sox have been these past few weeks.
It's been a little on the irritating side. Chris said, I have a bad day during the day. Yeah, I did. And then when I looked at the news, I'm like, I got 3 teams here that are doing stuff that I don't like. But anyway, hey, Ryan, really, really appreciate your calls. Your calls are always excellent, right on point. Really appreciate your call.
No problem. Thanks for having me on. And just one more thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Ryan.
Not wait for the preseason. I cannot wait to talk heavily about football again. It's that time of year, baby.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right, thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me on again.
We're gonna have to talk some Dallas Cowboys, I guess, too. That whole thing because he's gonna be wearing a Dallas Cowboys hat.
Well, hey, listen, the preseason obviously is just around the corner. Training camps have just started this week. NFL channel showing every training camp where they come from. So there is, football is starting to, pick its way up. And me and Paul have talked about, hopefully getting a guest on pretty soon who's really close with Belichick and get some Patriot inside information. So hopefully we can do that in the weeks to come and start to talk a little bit more about what this New England team can offer us this year in Massachusetts.
Well, I got a couple of comments over here, Chris. Let's see. Starting with, you're going to love this one. Al Costa says that Baltimore wouldn't have a winning record in AAA.
Hey, Al, I'm beating the Red Sox. I'm doing whatever I can do. It hasn't happened in so long. I got to give myself some kind of motivation. So I got the hat on. A lot of young kids. I just like watching them play. So it's a lot of fun for an Oriole fan right now.
All right. You mentioned the Patriots. Of course, I slipped in Brady, even though that's all in the past. That's all been talked out. We've talked about it over and over. But there were some Brady people that were like, oh, look at Bill Belichick talking all about Mac Jones. But then when Brady was there, never said a good thing about him. So John Latender says, Paul, with the exception of 2007, when did Brady have any talent of any name to speak of during his whole time with the Patriots? He always, more often than not, found a way. Well, he's a great quarterback. He did more often than not find a way. But come on. I mean, it would take 10 minutes to list all the Hall of Famers that's on his team, starting with Gronk. I mean, does Mac Jones have Gronkowski out there? The greatest tight end of all time to throw to? Does he have Julian Edelman, who made one of the greatest catches in the history of the Super Bowl, catching that ball that was just like an inch off the turf? I mean, on and on it goes. Look, again, Grady is great quarterback. But you've talked about it before, and let's talk about the team this year. Mac Jones, what do they want the kid to do? The kid played great last year with no talent around him. I mean, when Brady was there in 2019, they went into the first round against Tennessee. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Tommy ain't got no help. Bye-bye. So what do they want the kid to do? I mean, the kid, I think, is doing good. And so let's see what happens. I mean, there's a lot of no names there, but we'll have to see. I mean, this is really a good test for Belichick. Can he win with all these 8th or 9th or 10th rated players all around the team? I guess we're going to find out.
Well, I think the other question, Paul, and obviously the topic is that Belichick said something about Mac Jones in year 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a different situation maybe than what, when Tom came and he, obviously the Bledsoe got hurt and Tom came in, finished that. And then obviously, he took the reins after that. So I understand where Bill's coming from, trying to get some energy, trying to get some excitement into his team, trying to talk about his ace in the hole, which right now is obviously Mac Jones. So he wants to see that, hey, I have confidence in this kid in year 2 to hopefully take us further than what we did last year. I see nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Now, I'd have to go back and study and really get an idea of what he said about Tom Brady in year 2 and try to get all that and compare the two. Obviously, I haven't done that, but I know that Bill Belichick has said some great accolades about Tom Brady and the best quarterback of all time and what he's done for New England and so forth and so on. So I have no problems or issues whatsoever. What Bill is doing at the start of this camp, he knows that the kids come in for film. He looks leaner. He's throwing the ball down the field better. He's doing all the right things at his second year. Remember now, second year, to try to take this team and the load on his shoulders to lead them in the right direction. Nothing wrong with that. And I think Bill's just making a little bit of a, little acknowledge to say, hey guys, I got your back. Let's go do what we need to do. Nothing wrong with that.
I think you're right about the timeliness of it. I mean, what else can you say about a 44-year-old future Hall of Famer who's won 7 Super Bowls or been on 7 Super Bowl winning teams is the way I like to say it.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you really say about it? But now a second-year player who came into the league for the first time is trying to learn how to play in the NFL, much different than being in college. And now, like you said, in the offseason, he worked hard. He studied the film. He came back leaner. So, of course, he's going to talk more about the difference between, say, Mac Jones in year 1 and Mac Jones in year 2. A lot of times there's a big jump like there was with Patrick Mahomes and, some of these other great quarterbacks over the years. So, you're absolutely right. The timeliness of the comment, I think, is being overlooked by some of these Brady people.
Yeah, I agree. And also, even back then with Tom, you might be able to mention a lot of other players. Let's say an Amendola. Let's say a Wes Welker. Let's say an Edelman. A Randy Moss. I mean, you can think of a lot of names, even on the defensive side, when they had their great players as McGinnis and Bruschi and all that. So he maybe could talk up a couple of other names. Right now, that's very difficult. And we've talked about this on the New England defensive side and even the offensive side of some popular names, coming out right now when you're not even, as ESPN said, top 15 in any position. So he's going with his best, and it's Mac Jones.
All right. I see Philip McDonald out there. Thank you very much for looking in today. Give us a call at 774-762-6234. A lot of topics on the table today. And Ryan has thrown a comment in the comment line. As someone who roots for both Brady and the Pats at the same time, we can agree to disagree on some of these things. Yeah. I'm just scared about Mac's development with who's calling the shots. Now, at least some of the skill guys around him have definitely gotten somewhat better. But, what about, Joe Judge and, Patricia coming in? I mean, the Patriots are just getting criticized to high heaven at who they brought in, a couple of failed coaches and other teams. But, do you think they're being bashed a little bit more than they should be?
I think so. I mean, did Matt Patricia fail as an assistant to Bill before he left to go coach in Detroit? I
No.
don't think so. Did Joe Judge kind of fail Bill when he was with Bill and then left to coach the Giants or, whatever? And now they're back. So I think Bill has a good core repetition and know the system. And I think they have that figured out. So, yeah, and I understand what Ryan's saying. Can those guys, but I'm not banking on it as them being head coaches. I'm banking on it as they're being position coaches or coordinators, which is different than organizing a whole team and being a head coach. So I think they'll do fine. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, I'm looking at the roster, right? And on the offensive side of the ball, I'm less worried than on the defensive side of the ball. The offensive side of the ball, you got White coming back, Stevenson, you got a good running game. You still have two tight ends, Smith and Henry. Well, Henry had a great year. I would say a great year, but a very good year. And Smith just underperformed, right? I mean, he's a better player than what you saw last year. So even if it just gives you, what you expect from him, something decent, not like a Hall of Fame, season, but just give us something decent along with Henry. Now you got two good tight ends, right? And then Bourne, I thought he was very good as a wide receiver. And now you've added that other wide receiver they just tossed in there. So on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, maybe up front, I'm a little concerned about the offensive line and let some guys go. But, offensively, with the improvement of Mac Jones, the running game, the tight ends, the wide receiver there, I don't know. It's not a great roster, but it's pretty good, something that should be able to do some damage, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, I think you nailed it on the head when you talked about the offensive line. That's where it starts. Protection, obviously opening holes for the running backs and giving Mac Jones, time to use the skills that they think he's developed after this first year, which is obviously throwing the ball more down the field, maybe a chance to use his legs now and then. That would help out too. And so pass protection and the schemes and everything else, it's got to start there and it's got to get that offense going right away. So I think that will be the big thing for me in the first couple of weeks to see how well that's developed compared to the skill players that you have.
And of course, we've mentioned so many times, last year when the Patriots were playing Buffalo, those last couple of games, not even a punt, not even one punt. And when it happened in that first game of the regular season, it never happened in Bill Belichick's entire career. Think how long he's been around. He's closing in on 70 years old. Never happened. And then it happened 2 times in a row. Mm-hmm. And in that playoff game, not only did the defense not force one punt, Buffalo scored a touchdown on every possession. I mean, have you ever seen anything like it? A touchdown on every possession. You could take Tom Brady, roll him into Johnny Unitas and everything else. If the other team scores a touchdown every time they get the ball, you're not going to win the game. Best you can do is tie the game if you score a touchdown in every one of your possessions. So I'm thinking, okay, great. In the offseason, they're going to really tighten up the defense. They're going to do some with the linebackers. Well, you got a couple linebackers in there. On the corners, they let Jackson go. They replaced him with Malcolm Butler. Nobody knows why. He benched him a few years ago. So what did they really do on the defense, Chris? I still feel like they didn't do anything really of significance to tighten up that defense. And I know we talked last week, it's tough to ask the defense to keep going out there and getting stops when in the back of their mind they're thinking, why am I going out there killing myself when the offense isn't going to score any points, right? So that's true. There was a psychological effect to that. I think that was a great point that you made last week. But still, you got to be decent enough to get some stops. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no, absolutely. And obviously that starts with the front line. Can we get to the quarterback? The front line, can we stop the run? And then obviously you have to work on from linebackers back to cornerbacks to, okay, now we got to do, and cover the pass. So there's a lot of information there that these guys were learning in some of them in their first year. And again, they're trying to develop and get better in their second year. So another opportunity with a year under their belt in the Bill Belichick defensive scheme, which is supposed to be his specialty, to get better. So offensive line for me obviously would be number one, but definitely defensive line to linebackers getting in there, stopping the run and getting to quarterbacks because as you said, I just thought there was just way too much games where Jonathan Taylor took off on them for big yards. Obviously we knew what Josh Allen did against them. and so forth and so on. So year two under that with Bill, for some of them new guys, some of them young guys, free agents, rookies, Judon, couple of more, trying to get the scheme of everything. And obviously you have to stay healthy and all that too. So it's really big. And you're probably right, Paul. I'm not saying defense more than offense because I just think it's a team game and it works both ways. And we talked about that last time about how, an offense can really get excited when a defense makes some kind of turnover in the opponent's, offensive end. And the next thing you know, instead of having to go 80 yards, you only have to go 20 to maybe 10 yards and you score. And, it pumps you up. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. So it's a team game. Hopefully Bill, as Bill does, supposed to be better on defense. Let's see how they react this year coming up.
Well, I laid out a lot of money last year for Dylan and I to go to that Saints game, and they fell behind with that interception that bounced off of Smith. Went in for a touchdown at the beginning of the second half. So when Mac Jones comes down the field, gets within one possession. All right, so it's like I'm sitting there, this is great. Now we can get a stop, and then we'll give the ball to Mac Jones with 2 minutes left and see what he can do. We've talked about it before. I don't think we've actually seen that situation present itself. And the Saints, who basically had the backup quarterback was in there. I forget who it was. They just marched down the field. I'm like, wait a minute, what happened to this Bill Belichick defense? I mean, they sucked. You know what I mean? So I was frustrated, especially after laying out some benchies to get these
listen, because you know why, Paul? Because you're used to seeing that defense make the stop, punt it away, and Tom Brady comes down with 2 minutes and he does something, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, and you win the game. So you're so used to it. And when it doesn't happen or something goes wrong, everybody's like, well, what's going on? Well, all right, well, wait a minute. You don't have the same personnel as you used to have. You got some new guys in there. Some veterans are retired. A lot of changes in the process, and you try to put it together so that happens again. Well, it didn't. It did enough sometimes to make the playoffs, but it didn't do enough to get you, past obviously the first round. So let's see how it improves in the second year.
Just another spoiled Boston fan here. That's basically it. As Chris has called me out on this, and I think he's probably right. We're so used to winning over the last 20 years that, and then you think about how many trips to the finals. Now people say, well, a trip to the final doesn't count. But just think of the championships plus the extra trips to the finals. Like the Celtics went to the finals a couple of times, right? Bruins went to the finals one time, Red Sox, when they went and they won, you know what I mean? So Patriots won a few times and lost. So just think about, you get those, 11 championships or whatever. This is probably another 4 or 5 trips to the finals in 20 years, something like 14 or 15. Now we figure it out, but for God's sakes, talk about being spoiled. You're absolutely right. Anyway, give us a call here at 774-762-6234. I'm fumbling with my microphone over here. There we go. That's bad. I got so excited. I knocked it right off the table. 774-762-6234. Give us a shout here and let us know what you think. Now, I got a comment over here. Let me see. Where did that comment go? Yes, Phil says, let's see. Defense basics and fundamentals. The locker room is a reaction to the total disrespect. So the other guys say, these are the corners of the team, how they will treat us. So I'm not quite sure what he meant by that, but give us a call, Philip McDonald. I know you're out there, 774-762-6234. You can expand on that and elaborate. And
Paul, let me ask you this, Paul. Was your hands moving at work today where you knocked the gavel over?
Yeah, I was saying, Your Honor, what's going on there? I was all fired up, so then I let this spill over to the show. So yeah, absolutely, I was fired up during the day. Plus, I got a vacation coming up, so I'm fired up about the vacation too.
Okay.
So let's see. We had a comment here about how, and this really speaks for a lot of the Patriot fans, that those guys are failed head coaches, right? You said before, they're failed head coaches, but they were pretty good assistant coaches to build in the system. Okay, but it's not so much that. It's that neither of these guys have called plays before, and this is the second year. It's a very crucial year for Mac Jones's development. So are these the right guys to go in there on the second year of Mac Jones as he's making this progression? That's the question a lot of Patriots fans are asking.
Well, right, because they have been, position coaches, and now they have to make the decisions of obviously what to call. So you have to think by Bill bringing them back is the first thing. Okay. Second part is, you're going to have to put a little bit more on them to make the right calls. Now, that doesn't mean Bill can't be on the headset and say, hey, maybe I don't want that. Or at the same time, that first game ends and he goes, hey, wait a minute, I don't like this. And you see Bill all the time gets out his pen and paper, or he gets his chart and he knocks this off and that off, and he doesn't want that play anymore or whatever. So I'm sure that Bill will have the final say in a lot of things. But as the presenter said, he is right. They may not be specific play callers. They were as the head coach, and they had to do their things. But now it is specifically offense and obviously try to figure out how to get Mac Jones even better. So, yeah, they have a lot on their plate, and maybe Patriots fans don't like it. The only thing you think you have to really like about it is they know what Bill is. They know what Bill does. They know all the schemes of the New England Patriots. So I think, you have to be some kind of confident in that going in. Instead of bringing someone out of the clear blue, I guess, maybe out of college or somewhere else and bring them in. So let's see how that develops, during the season and what it looks like. And, yeah, year 2 is a big year for Mac Jones. And hopefully Judge, Bill, doing the right thing with him. It sounds like it. He sounds leaner. Arm strength is great, on the diet, all that kind of stuff. So looks like it's moving in the right direction. Let's see how it pays out.
I don't know if he's doing that Tom Brady diet.
No.
Tom Brady has a whole, that's a tough one. I looked at what he ate and I thought, oh my God, how can he eat this stuff? I can't do it. I was thinking maybe I should try this, that way I could live to be 95 years old. I'm looking at this, I'm like, forget it. I can't eat all this stuff. Hey, Phil, I know you're out there. When I filled in on WBSM, you called every single week. So you can call Santos on sports too, 774-762-6234. Give us a call. We really enjoy rapping and talking sports. And we're going to just slip this in because, I just want to slip this in. This thing about the Celtics trying to make that trade for Kevin Durant. And I was thinking to myself, all right, well, Kevin Durant, Chris and I talked about it, kind of banged up, had some injuries, still may be arguably one of the best, or if not the best player in the world, if healthy, though. That's a big if healthy. If he's not healthy, it doesn't matter. But putting Jaylen Brown on the chopping block, so to speak. I mean, if he's not happy and he wants to go and all that, but I still ask the question. And I know the Celtic fans are like, what the heck are you talking about, Santos? Can't you see talent when you see it? I think Jaylen Brown is just as good and better in the clutch than Jason Tatum is. So if you're going to make that trade, I think Tatum, or rather Jaylen Brown, would work better with Kevin Durant, because Kevin Durant is kind of like that laid-back personality, kind of like Jason Tatum is. But Jaylen Brown, he's a killer. That guy falls on him and rubs his rear end in his face. He ain't gonna go have cocktails with the guy after the game. You know what I mean? He doesn't care about being in the club and all this stuff like Tatum does. At least it doesn't seem like it. So I want to see Jaylen Brown in there with that killer instinct with Durant, and hopefully if Marcus Smart was still there, and the new guard they just brought in, and Brogdon, and of course you got Time Lord, these other guys. That's a hell of a starting lineup right there. But why don't they ever consider Tatum? Why is it always Brown all the time? I don't like it.
Well, the first thing is, Paul, I'd like to see a Boston insider from the Celtics to talk to, because I'm not sure how confident this trade really was. And I know Tatum sat back and said, I haven't heard anything about this. Brown came out and just did something and went SMH. And so I'm not really sure what is true and what is not true. And what I've heard was Brown, White, and one pick. And the Nets said no. And then the Nets supposedly came back with, we want Brown, Smart, White, and like 4 picks. Now, I don't know what's true and what's not true. And of course, when you're talking big names like these 2 guys, or 3 guys if you want to add Tatum, and Brown and Durant, I don't know what's real and what's not real. So I don't have all the insights on that. But, the Boston people and the Boston Celtics organization, I believe, hold a very high standard that Tatum right now is above Brown. That's just the way that I feel. I feel that's what they think. And so that's what they go with first. But to see how much this trade is really true and what is out there, I'm not really sure on that, because I've heard a lot of things about him going to Miami. I've heard him about going to the Lakers with LeBron. I've heard, going to Phoenix. Big names coming back, Booker. Just things that are really out there. And I'm going, wow, how true is all of this? And sometimes, reporters and insights like to go a little further than you normally will. So very difficult to say unless I've heard from Jaylen Brown specifically. But I even heard Tatum say, I want nothing to do with that. I like my core. I like my team. I like things just the way they are. So I don't know what's right, what's fact, what's fiction.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Of course, it's talk radio or podcast fodder, as they say, so it's fun to talk about. So nobody really knows what's going on. I mean, I think Brown probably always felt like he's second fiddle to Tatum and stuff like that. So there's that whole thing. But let me ask you, right? Chris Santos has been around a long time, right?
Yep.
He's also somebody who's coached basketball, kind of a student of the game, really, I would say. I think you really are. You're really like a student of the game. So you're watching Tatum and you're watching Brown, right?
Yep.
How much better do you think Tatum is than Brown? Because the experts will say, yeah, he's better. He's, but then they put him as a first team all-star. And I'm like, wait a minute. On a list of 10 people, and I know there are a lot of people that were injured and stuff like that, so they didn't make that list, but I wouldn't put Tatum in the top 5. But the real question is, how close is Brown to Tatum? Do you think Brown is as good as Tatum? Or how much of an advantage do you give Tatum?
No, I think that there's a lot of similarities the way they both play. I just think Tatum's just a little bit above him. I like his shot better personally. I like some of the other little things that he does, maybe a little bit more. Again, he may not make that, as you say, the clutch shot down the stretch there. But I think he has a lot more of the other intangibles that, a little bit more than Brown. But I wouldn't say it's a huge distance. Let's put it that way. I think it's right up there too. And, and as Brown continues to grow with this team, that he could possibly even surpass him if he continues to grow and his game gets even better. So it's still a possibility, Paul.
Well, Brown has really improved a lot over the last few years. I mean, he's really worked on his game. He's worked on his shot. The thing I like about him, though, and again, I hate to keep bashing Tatum because I think he's a great player. He's certainly not even hit his prime yet and everything else. But, Brown seems to have that it factor, that that meanness that you have to go over the top, Like in that last game, I mean, he was like, him and Horford kind of kept him in that last game. But, I don't know. He just has that little mean streak that you have to win a game when you really need it. And I'm not sure Tatum has what Brown has in that area.
Well, then I can go the opposite way and say, yeah, he does. But does that mean you're out of control and you make easy turnovers? And we saw a lot of that from Jaylen Brown, out of control dribbling, out of control passing, and really forcing things that he shouldn't have done. So there's good parts and bad parts. Yeah. Now his demeanor, I agree, is much tougher than probably Tatum's, and we don't see that kind of mean streak from him too often. They'll both look at the refs and put their arms up like everybody else does. But so it can work for you. It can work against you. It's just how you're able to handle it and control it.
I think Brown really had trouble with the turnovers because he was looking around and saying, I don't see anybody else putting the team on my back or their back. So maybe I got to push some plays here or try to take it to the rim a little bit more, which is what a lot of people said. Well, why don't you take it to the rim? Well, so he tried to go inside, but when the ball went to him out in 3-point land, as the clock is dribbling down, I shouldn't say dribbling down, but going down, he was the guy that you wanted to take the shot.
Yeah, he was. And there were certain games that, in the third quarter, it was Tatum's quarter, and he went off and started making shots. So, it's a combination of trying to sustain for 4 quarters and get it done during that entire time. And I think, when the Celtics play well, they play well by movement, and they move the ball, and everyone's moving, and they're all in sync, and they do it, and we've seen it, how they can. And sometimes when you're flat-footed, and you're standing there and you go some ISO ball and you can't create the shot off the dribble, things like that, then you force it. You make bad turnovers. You're trying to do things that maybe you wouldn't do normally. And, give credit to other teams' Ds, give credit for one-on-one defense, things like that. There's a lot of intangibles that make that up. And, both of them have their strengths and both of them have their weaknesses. But I would keep Brown close to what Tatum does. I don't think there's a huge difference.
All right, great. And, we've talked so much about Brown and Tatum, we forgot about Marcus Smart. So Ryan is saying he really is mixed about bringing KD in for all the reasons that we talked about before. But then he says to think that Smart is the one that's holding up the deal is laughable. I'd trade his ass out in a second. He didn't say it like that. He said I'd chip him out in a heartbeat. Now that you got Brogdon here. Well, now you got Brogdon here, does that make Smart expendable? I mean, he was the defensive player of the year, so he definitely has value there.
Well, he does. That's true. And now you have, and let's not forget, you're trying to use Smart as a legit point guard, and that's not Smart. Smart was coming out of Oklahoma State there as a shooting guard. And now you have Brogdon, supposedly a ball handler, a true point guard. So now it's how Udoka or the system sees this working out this upcoming year and put those two together, or do we get rid of one of them, or how all this is going to work out. So going to be interesting to see. But Ryan, yeah, it's a position that I don't think Smart deserve to be in when it's not your natural position.
All right, 774-762-6234. Give us a call and join us here on Santos on Sports. We're talking a little Red Sox, a little Patriots, and also a little bit of, Patriots, Red Sox, and Celtics.
Yep.
And we did get a comment from Philip McDonald a few minutes ago when we were talking about the Red Sox, and Ryan and I were complaining and moaning and groaning, and Chris has got his Orioles hat on and everything. He said, well, the Red Sox did go first to worst, back to first again a few years ago, right? So in other words, if they drop off, they're in last place, but then they regroup and they have a pretty good core there. They sign a couple guys, bring a couple guys in, they're a big market team. They got deep pockets. They can make some trades and, clear out some of the dead wood there and make a little room, for the salary and so forth. You can go from worst to first. We've seen it happen before. What do you think about that?
Well, it better start with the pitching staff, Phil, because I truly believe I don't think they can get it with those 5 starters, and I don't think they can do it with their bullpen. So I think they need some help there. They've been trying with the farmhands. It hasn't worked out. So at least start in one direction and then see how it goes after that. But I think the defense and the pitching staff is the first thing that should be on their minds.
All right. We're glad to have you looking in here on Santos on Sports. We're talking sports, and we're having a lot of fun covering a lot of different territory. Chris went back there and he pulled that hat out, the Baltimore Orioles hat. And as soon as I got him here on the, on the Zoom call and everything, and I saw him there, I'm like, what is that? Is that an O's hat? I'm like, oh my God, it was kind of funny because when Baltimore passed the Red Sox and they put the standings up and I saw the Orioles here and the Red Sox there, oh, that was like, you must have been, you must have had like a warm feeling going up and down your neck when you saw that.
Hey, I got to take what I can get because it doesn't happen often. So at least now I got something to talk about a little bit and say, okay, well, we're up a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that, we're going to take off and win the wild card or do any of that. But, at least the organization's attempting to move in the right direction. And that's all I care about. And, they've shown signs of winning games when it's tight. They show signs of losing some tight games as well. But, they're not the doormats where they've been really getting hammered and only winning like 25 games, 30 games and being a real disgrace. So it's nice to just have a good season going anyways.
Shout out to Charlie Perry looking in here on
Hey, Charlie.
Sports. We really appreciate it. Big football fan, very knowledgeable. So he made a few comments here. First of all, he said this offensive line will be above average to good, but it's the defensive line that needs some help.
Okay, well, I can see that, especially what happened at the end of last year. So they need some work. The offensive line, I think, will too, and we discussed that just a little while ago. How much this defense can, stop the run in the middle, get to the quarterbacks on the outside. So, yeah, a lot going on, Charlie. I saw Charlie on Facebook. Nice picture of Mac Jones saying, hey, it's football season. So Charlie's really excited about year 2. And and what Mac and this offensive line can bring to this offense for New England.
Well, Charlie follows that up with, the whole question about these coaches working with Bill. They failed
Yeah.
as head coaches.
Yeah.
One, of course, with the New York Giants, the other one with Detroit. And he said, hey, those coaches will follow Bill, just what you said before.
I think so.
And, he's really looking forward to talking football, but he thinks that those coaches are going to be able to, they worked with Bill before, both Patricia and Judge. So why couldn't that happen again?
Well, I think it's a great question that we could ask our Patriot insider when we get her on and see if she's got some knowledge of Judge and Patricia and really what to expect from this coaching core, along with Bill, to get an idea what these three have in common and what it's going to look like for this upcoming season. So, Charlie, stay tuned to Santos on Sports, because we're going to do some Patriots talking, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to talk about that as we proceed into the football season. And then he did make one comment on the Celtics issue. He said, we don't need Kyrie's friend. I think he's talking about, I believe he's talking about KD. So I don't know. The core, that core got us within a game of winning the whole thing, just as it is. So there's certainly an argument, not to do anything drastic.
Well, I'm hoping that all this hoopla and this hype doesn't really hurt the team if they stay all together and get ready for next year, because I just don't want to see Brown and maybe even Smart or even White or some of these guys to sit back and say, well, this organization really doesn't want me. Why am I here? I hope that doesn't happen. They stay with what they got. They added the two pieces. If they do something else, then great. If they don't, let's roll with it and go for it next year.
The thing that worries me is that road to the finals, I don't know that they're going to get the breaks they got last year. We talk about Middleton being out. I mean, Giannis is nasty. I mean, he's a great player.
Absolutely.
So his second guy wasn't there. That makes all the difference in the world if things still went 7 games, right? Even Miami, Butler was trying to do the whole thing. And actually, that shot that Butler took at the end there, if that thing goes in, it's bye-bye Celtics, right? So, and the Nets, the Nets, we were all surprised that they swept the Nets like that, the way that they did. But, you got a healthy KD and you got a few pieces there. They were all close games, even though it was a 4-game sweep. So the point I'm making is, and we've talked about it before, the road to the finals, they had some good fortune, kind of like the Bruins did a few years ago. Maybe not as much, but, that road to the finals, they got some breaks, which teams need to have. But there's no guarantees that that's going to happen again. I mean, it's not that easy to get that far. We already know that anyway, but all those breaks that they got, I don't know. I think they really need to be better than last year to win.
Yeah, let's not forget about Harden and Embiid in Philadelphia.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And, listen, when you're that close, other teams are not just going to sit there too. They're going to attempt to make their, hey, what do we need to help Jimmy Butler? Hey, what do we help to need Giannis? Hey, can Embiid and Harden just the two? We need some people around them. So those teams are going to sit back and say, well, what can we add as well to, one, get better and compete with the Celtics? And I think that's what teams are thinking about. How can we stop Tatum and Brown and now the new guys coming in and get better to force their hand and be able to beat them in the first round or second round? So they're not just going to sit back on their laurels. They're going to make some moves as well.
And Brown and Tatum have been to the conference finals a couple of times now, to the finals. You would think that maybe they'd have that hunger, because they know what it takes to get there. And now it's just to get over the hump. And maybe some of these changes will put them over the top. And then Charlie Perry, he says true, true, and true. So he typed that in, I think, when you were talking. So whatever it is you were saying, you're saying true, true, true. And then switching back to the Patriots just for a second, he says that those guys are all loyal. Judge, Patricia, Bill, they all have, that connection because they had success before. So Bill even said, he goes, hey, these guys are great coaches, even though it didn't work out as head coach. These guys are back on the staff for a reason because Bill believes in them. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, look what he did with McDaniels. Remember, Josh left. He tried it the first time. It didn't work out. He came back to Bill. They worked it out. They did what they needed to. And now he's going with his second stint of head coaching with the Raiders. So it's been that way too. But it's guys he's trust. It's guys he knows that can get the job done. And so right now, it's a connection with those guys that he feels very comfortable that they will call the right plays, defense and offense and quarterbacks and everything else. And so he's happy with his system and he's happy with his coaching staff. Let's see what happens.
Ryan makes one last comment here before we close it down. I love the fact that they're trying Trent Brown at left tackle and Wynn at right. Brown was fantastic protecting Tom's blind side back in 2018. And that's important now that, Jones obviously in the second year, gotta protect that blind side.
Well, yeah, and at the same time, you have 5 people on that front line. And there's a lot of guys now that can be from tackle to guard to tackle. You can even maybe the center. You can move some pieces of the puzzles around. So I think that's what Bill's thinking, to say, hey, what suits us best to keep our franchise quarterback healthy, not getting hit, and we need him for the whole season. So
I can tell that our folks here who follow Santos on Sports are really eager to talk football. So maybe we'll do that the next time. We'll cue it up.
Yeah, that would be great too. Yeah, I mean, by then we'll see what the Red Sox look like. And, some of our, let's talk, Paul, because some of our guests may not be able to make it for our full hour. Sometimes we've had guests on just for 20 minutes. So we'll see what happens. And, we'll take it from there. But yeah, it's coming up football season and there's a lot of hype and energy here in New England.
And don't forget those Dallas Cowboys. Dak might have a big year this year. You never know. Anyway,
I just don't know if this team can have any good years with still Jerry Jones at the helm. He just needs to stay out of anything, and just let them play ball. But he's always involved in something, so it always makes it difficult. At the same time, this could be interesting with Mike McCarthy. Is he going to be on the hot seat? Because there's a guy there that was with New Orleans who I would just love to have coaching in Dallas named Sean Payton. So let's see what happens there.
All right. We'd like to take the opportunity to thank our sponsors. We're very happy to have you on board supporting Santos on Sports.
Yes.
Scotty's Pub, 202 Pleasant Street in Fall River, Citywide Glass, with 3 locations to serve you. 425 State Road in Dartmouth, additional locations in Fall River and Taunton. Lakeville Athletic Club. And, of course, Chris Santos has played with Lakeville Athletic Club on his chest, playing tennis and everything. Well, maybe the name on the back. So that's more important than the name on the front. Anyway, 325 Bedford Street in Lakeville. You can play tennis and pickleball. And John Seed, good friend of ours, attorney at law, 156 8th Street in New Bedford. And you can check out his website at johnseedlaw.com. Hey, a lot of fun today, Chris.
Yeah, it was good. And thanks to Ryan for calling in and everyone who's typed in and chatted with us. Always great to get some input. And like we said, hopefully we can continue to talk about the Red Sox as they try to, again, make a comeback to at least get to the wild card. And then obviously Patriot season just around the corner. First week of training camp, real exciting. You can get up there and kind of watch them and see a little bit of their practices. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers are doing that.
All right. Thank you very much to Chris Santos. I'm Paul Santos for Santos on Sports. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up with you next time for Santos on Sports. Take care.